16 whole minutes of Simon's Hytale gameplay just dropped, which is absolute insanity. We will be going over it all, discussing new features, animations, and more as we progress through the video, so come along for the ride. I cannot stress to you, this is literally the biggest piece of Hytale news we have ever seen, potentially bigger than the announcement trailer, so let's dive right into it. This very first clip we see shows so many things that we've never seen before. First of all, we see a blocking animation, this being that of the skeleton, as well as seeing Simon block some hits himself, which is pretty darn cool. We also get to see a stamina bar in use for the first time. We have seen concepts and we've seen even stationary stamina bars before, but this is the first time that the stamina bar has actually had a functionality and played a part. And if you pay attention to it throughout the rest of the video, you will see so much movement going on down there. We also notice that the durability of the weapons that Simon is using does not decrease as he swings with them. This is cool because it means you don't have to worry about your weapons breaking mid-fight, and you're not going to go through a ton of materials if you like PvP or PvE, but it does slightly confuse me because I just kind of expected that they would, and like in the concept arts back in the day, we saw numbers that seemed to represent durability, although who knows now if that was actually the case. We also see in the bottom right corner there's a reload timer every time you swing. This is usually only a couple tenths of a second, so I'm sure you're not going to be keeping an eye on it, but maybe for some ultra heavy weapons you might watch it to see when you can swing again and time your attacks to perfection. We also finally get to see the special gauge in use. It charges up as Simon gains hits on the opponents. We then get to see that the item pickup list is still there. We've seen this many times before and I didn't think it was going anywhere, but it's cool to know that it was still there. We also see when Simon is fighting the second skeleton, he actually swings at it with his sword, a nice underhand cut, and it actually breaks one of the blocks. Now this block looks like it's something like a bush or moss, so I would suspect that most blocks do not get broken by random swings of weapons, but it is cool to know that the environment can change, and this leaves a ton of interesting possibilities for spleef style games in the future. One new thing that we've never ever seen before and that we really had no idea existed is this shield bash. Now, the thing is, this shield bash seems pretty darn powerful because if you look, there's nowhere anywhere that indicates that this has a cooldown. And there's also, based on his swing speed, probably just no cooldown in the game. All it does is uses a bunch of stamina. So while it does sacrifice your stamina pretty darn quickly, it seems an effective way to deal a ton of damage super fast, especially if you know that your opponent is really low on health. In the next clip, we get a view that sprinting does in fact use stamina, which I'm sure is going to piss some people off really bad because I've seen even a number of videos about Minecraft's hunger system and why that sucks to do with sprinting, so I'm not sure what the general reception of that is going to be, but it's cool because as we see throughout the rest of the video, it makes Simon's escape from some monsters a little bit more difficult and he needs to plan them a little bit better, which is pretty cool. We also see some 4-block mantling, which is good, nice to know that's still there. And as this character pans off to the left, we can see what I think must be a world generation glitch because we have two mountains that rise up. They look like they should meet perfectly in the middle, but there's a pretty large gap with just flat faces beside them. So maybe this is some evidence of the polishing that still needs to be done to the world gen engine to get it shippable for release. Although if this is the worst of their issues, I think that they're in a much better spot than they're letting on right now. Post editing me here on hindsight, that is not a mountain, that is a gateway, and I am dumb, and that is also a prefab and not a world generation glitch. Whoop-de-doo. I was a little bit trigger happy with that identification, I guess, so my bad. We can also see a number of large prefabs that are present as this player scans over the landscape, which is pretty awesome. It's nice to know that we'll have at least some things to explore, some hints of life in the universe, where Simon kind of implied that maybe that wouldn't be the case, so it's nice to have those confirmed. And we see a dive roll into a slide when he jumps off of this boulder, which is pretty cool. I'm sure all the parkour people are going to love that, and hopefully it'll just make the gameplay experience feel super smooth. In this clip, we see that Simon has a stack of 100 arrows, which is a round number, and we'll see later this seems to be the max stack of arrows, although not the max stack for everything, but that is a point for future clips. We also see that the offhand item is still present in the inventory slot, but not held with double daggers, as well as other double-handed items, such as the bow that he uses. And we see him felling trees, which happens as soon as you go all the way through the trunk, the rest of the tree falls down. There's this really cool leaf animation. It's pretty awesome. Tons of items fall from the sky. It's going to make farming trees and wood so much easier. We see that you can also pick up stuff off the ground, such as flowers and other plants, using F, and based on the title, the iron short bow of the bow that he uses, it implies that there are at least two different classes of bows, the short bows and the long bows. I would guess that short bows are a little bit quicker on the draw, less power, less range, whereas long bows, more power, slower draw, more damage, more range, all that fun stuff. Hopefully there will be more than just two classes of bows, but we'll have to wait and see for that. We also see for the first time that the special move of a bow is a triple shot, which is pretty cool, although it seems to mostly just be triple the damage rather than having any actual extra functionality to do with maybe hitting multiple opponents, as again, you'll see more of this throughout the rest of the video. There is very little arrow spread, and they only seem to hit multiple targets on like 1 or 2 occasions, and Simon uses this a bunch. This clip all but confirms that the max stack size for arrows is 100, as Simon clearly has 4 stacks of 100 arrows in his inventory. Maybe he's just really weird and the max size is actually 250 and he just split them up for no reason, but I would feel safe saying and putting money on the fact that the max stack size for arrows is 100. We see the axe special used in this one for the first time. It's this crazy spin move. It's actually really cool, and it seems to be a very effective way at dealing damage to a number of enemies. Speaking of a number of enemies, it seems that throughout this clip, Simon takes very little damage considering the number of Outlanders that are attacking him. It's unclear if this is an AI problem where they're not really hitting him as often as they should be, or if this is a difficulty thing and he set the difficulty really low. or maybe he's over leveled, as we can see that his battle axe is actually a cobalt axe, and my understanding is that cobalt is a much higher level than iron and other things, so perhaps he's just way overgeared for the prefab that he is taking on. We also obviously get to see that there are Outlander outposts in the game, which is really awesome. I was kind of worried that there would be no faction presence at all, but throughout the gameplay we see a bunch of the different factions, so there is no concern about that anymore. We also get to see hand crossbows for the first time, and we see that every time you load them you get 6 shots, which is nice. It should hopefully make them relevant, whereas if you have ever played Minecraft, you'll know that crossbows are pretty much irrelevant compared to bows, except for a few very niche cases, usually for more funky stuff and less for PvP. But it's very cool to see that these will hopefully have a bit of their own personality, their own niche, hopefully some possibility at being used well in PvP, and altogether just a pretty darn cool weapon. We also see that you can smash pots with weapons in this game, which terrifies me because if you've ever played Zelda, you know that you can smash pots. They sometimes drop money, items, all that jazz, and I am obsessed with smashing these pots. So this is going to significantly hinder my progression and the speed at which I make it through the game. Hopefully though, there's not going to be too many, but still it's pretty cool. And later we do actually see some items coming out of a pot. I'll mention that when we see it, which is really awesome. We then see Simon sit in this very randomly placed but functional chair, which is a huge departure from Minecraft. A lot of people are going to notice that and compare it right away. And we get another look at some dive rolls, this time not going into a slide afterwards, and Simon takes no fall damage. This clip altogether is pretty awesome. There's a couple of things that are like, maybe this is an indicator of not so polished of a game, but altogether really, really cool. In this next combat clip against a bunch of skeletons, we see that the physics are very bugged and need some work, with the skeleton kind of just sliding around randomly. I have no idea if that's a hitbox issue or a block issue where the skeleton has been like knocked back into the blocks and caused the physics engine to have issues there, or if it's just not playing a walk backwards animation. But whatever it is, it's quite janky looking, very weird. Hopefully that'll get fixed, maybe not before early access because it is really nitpicky, but before V1.0. We also see some mace combat, which is exactly the same as we saw before in, what was it, like the Winter 2021 blog post or something, with the slow alternating single attacks, the charge attacks, and the big jumping special. And we also see the skeleton actually performing blocks with their one-handed sword, despite using a shield, which strikes me as pretty odd, because why would it do that? But also, it strikes me as odd that a single one-handed sword would be able to fully block an axe or a mace swinging at it. So maybe this is a balance issue, maybe this is gameplay. Who knows? Doesn't seem to be the most realistic. Maybe it'll change in the future. We shall see. I feel like I'm saying that a lot this video. We also see this weird hilt bash move for the axe. It's very much not as clear as the hilt bash move that we've seen with some of the bigger maces, but it's still pretty cool altogether. It looks like he might be trying to block here, but I'm not fully sure. We also see very clearly in this clip that the special gauge clears when weapons are switched, which makes a lot of sense because it prevents you from like using, if a special is way better on one weapon, it prevents you from using one weapon that's better normally and then switching to that better weapon. So it's pretty cool. It's going to help lock you into using a certain weapon for a certain encounter versus switching it up all the time, which would become very confusing and a little bit less strategic in PvP scenarios. We also get a look inside his inventory, and here we see 250 stack sizes for sticks, which is pretty darn awesome. We also see a bunch of cool icons, no idea what they mean. We see that his health is again not non-100 number, so it seems like there's some way to artificially boost the amount of health you have, which again could explain why Simon seems to be taking so little damage. We see that there's pocket crafting, which is I guess the same as a 4x4 grid inventory crafting bench thingamajigger in Minecraft, and we see that there is a bunch of wood types. Notably, these logs seem to only stack to 50. It looks like we have multiple stacks of the same log types that are set to 50. So it seems that depending on the type of item, there's going to be a different range of stacks, similar to how Minecraft has unstackable items, 16 stacks and 64 stacks, but seemingly in bigger numbers and more numbers in this case. We also hear a low health warning chime, which is really annoying. I don't know if I like it, don't like it. I'll have to get used to it, have to play the game with it a couple times. It feels right now like it might break immersion a little bit, but we'll all find out in the future. And he eats an apple, which does weird things. It pops up this health icon right above his health bar, and it seems to gradually allow him to regen health, but it doesn't immediately regen health for him like we've seen in the past with the equipment selection offhand video showcase thingamajigger. We then run through a Scarrick den, and yes, old Scarricks are back. I love old Scarricks. I think that they're better than the new Scarricks. So I'm very happy to see them back. They also just look super cool. They look way bigger than I expected. Their antenna glow, which is awesome because it indicates that hopefully we'll be able to have glow in the dark skins as well, which I think would just be so cool. There's also a map button in this one, and for some reason the whole UI section in the bottom right has changed, and it's the way that it was before in every other clip in this video except for this one, which has the tab button for the inventory and it has the M button for the map. So I don't know why it's like that. And then we can also hear there are some very cool echo noises that occur in this underground cavern, which I think is pretty awesome. This clip shows us a block that's placeable called a healing totem, which can also be picked back up, and it replenishes stamina very rapidly. I would assume it also replenishes health, considering it's called a healing totem, and it pops up that same little icon as the apples did, right above the health bar, but obviously Simon had full health, so we'll never get to know. Until obviously we do get to know when the game releases and somebody tests it out, or if maybe we see some more gameplay of this before then. We also get to see the Colossus, which is pretty cool. Nice to see what I think is a mini boss mob, but I'm not 100% sure in the game. We also see a Void Eye, and gosh, these look freaky flying around, but it comes down, it attacks with some crawlers. We get to see the crawlers pop out of the ground. It's all really awesome. All in all, very long clip, very little to glean from it, but we do get to see evidence of the Void spawn for the first time, which is pretty awesome. In this next section, we see that fall damage is a thing, so I guess if you don't hit the drop roll button at the right time, you take fall damage, which seems to be completely avoidable, but it's nice to know that it's in there, as most games have fall damage, and fall damage is pretty cool. Plus, it's just objectively hilarious to launch somebody off of a tower and watch them fall to their death in Minecraft, so it's nice to know that that'll be in Hytale as well. We also see that things drop out of pots, which, like I mentioned earlier, is going to be a problem for me because I'm going to have to smash every single pot I ever see. If they regenerate, it's going to be the end of me. We're never going to get anything done. I'm going to run around in circles around a dungeon, smashing pots, trying to get all the loot I can. And that's it for this cave exploration section of the video. We then wander through a swamp where we see that there are some cool item markers that make items really visible in the dark, which is pretty awesome. Hopefully it'll mean that you can pick every single piece of wood up when they all explode out of the trees that are automatically felled. We also see this random glowy blue monster. I'm surprised at how glowy a lot of the monsters are in Hytale. I wasn't fully expecting that, but of course we'll take it. We didn't see any fen stalkers, which is interesting. I assumed that they would be in the game and that they would be very common spawns in the swamp biomes. Maybe their spawns just haven't been added in yet, because Simon seemed to imply that a lot of mobs weren't complete in that sense because they had no natural spawning conditions, and maybe the only ones that they've made so far are ones that they want to showcase in this video. We also see Simon struggling to get up a hill, which is notable because they had previously said that they were working on an auto step up block feature so that running up a single block gap would be similar to running up stairs in Minecraft. However, Simon, you can see it runs into the side of blocks a ton, so either it has to do with approaching them from the side, or that feature has been fully removed for whatever reason. Not fully sure why. I kind of feel like it was a good idea for quality of life, but I'm sure we'll learn more about it in the future, or maybe nobody will ever talk about it, and it'll just be like I hallucinated the whole idea. We also get to see a view of the map for the first time, which is pretty cool. Some information we can see on the map is that there is supposedly a player cap of 100. I don't know if this is arbitrary. I doubt that this will be possible in early access, but again, it remains to be seen. Maybe 100 will just always be the cap on players for Hytale. In this next clip, we get to see Simon mark a point on the map, which is pretty nice. You can just pick anywhere in the world and then it'll mark it. You'll see that on your compass, which is in the top, and you can just follow that. Very good quality of life. I'm loving this mini map. It's so good. As somebody who spent a lot of time mapping out Minecraft worlds, I might be a little bit sad to miss the concept of a map wall. However, having a mini map that you can just access right away is going to be so convenient. We also see very clearly that skeletons can hold torches. If you've been paying any attention at all, you'll have noticed that several times already throughout this video. However, this is the most obvious part, and there's not a ton of other stuff to talk about this clip. So, they hold torches. It seems to mainly just make them easy to see. They're skeletons, monsters of the night. I don't know why they would need torches, but maybe there's a lore reason that we'll find out about those. In this next clip, we get a beautiful view of a Slothian village and Zone 4, the underground caves. The surrounded light up trees are so beautiful, and honestly it seems like we can see really far here. So that's a good sign for the render distance of this game. For Minecraft, for me, one of the biggest limiting factors, especially in the adventure ability, is the fact that there's such a low render distance. So having this crazy high render distance is going to be super great in making Hytale the adventure game that we've all dreamed of. We also see a target range and some dummies, which is pretty cool. Nothing new about that, but I just thought it would be cool to mention. However, this entire area has no NPCs, so I wonder if it's incomplete at this point in time, or at least if none of the NPCs have a spawn condition or any animations or any AI really behind them. We do know that the old team had given up on shipping Zone 4 for launch, and since Slothians are part of Zone 4, maybe they were underdeveloped compared to the rest of the factions in the game that we've already seen have fights and have at least functional AI throughout the earlier clips in this video. Here we see Simon raiding a skeleton dungeon that has a lava hound in it. This lava hound dies amazingly easy. It takes like 2 or 3 hits from a sword and it's dead. Hopefully this is part of the balance issues that Simon was talking about, because if such a threatening looking monster is so untanky compared to these skeletons who are surviving so many hits in a row, that is kind of problematic. I feel like the lava hound should be more popular. It looks cooler and more threatening, whereas the skeleton is kind of your basic mob, so it should be a bit more of a pushover. In general, a lot of the basic AI seem to have a lot of health in this video, so hopefully that's some of the balancing issues, like I said, and they'll kind of bring those numbers down, make them make a little bit more sense, make PvE less of a long game and less of a game where, as you see Simon do many times, you have to run away from the mobs because you just can't take them out quick enough, and hopefully make it a little bit more strategic and a game that can kind of be run smoothly versus attack, retreat, attack, retreat. At the end of this clip, we also see him attack an unsuspecting skeleton, and by all means, the skeleton seems to be holding some sort of old-style gun. I can't tell if it's like a pistol or a musket or a rifle or what it is, but it's pretty cool, although the presence of guns has many implications, and we will get into those a little bit further on. So yeah, on to the next clip. We then get to see Simon checking out his inventory, map, and creation tools, most importantly, while he's in the game. This is really awesome because it means that you can change your character as we see, and you can make mods, all that jazz from right within a game using the same menu as the map and the inventory. It seems like each of the asset editor, model editor, and world gen editor are their own apps. We know that the model editor is going to be Blockbench, and we know that Noesis GUI was used to make the generated user interface, so we'll remain to see which are used for the rest of them. I'm surprised that the world gen editor is its own app, because I would have assumed that that's mostly code based and within Hytale, but who knows. I'm not really a modder guy. I'm more into like redstone, building, PvP, that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's definitely not my wheelhouse. I'm sure you can find more credible sources on this, and I'm sure once the game comes out, it'll make a lot more sense. He also flies around at the end of this clip, and we get to see a Torque village, which is pretty cool. This is pretty much the most detailed look we've ever gotten at one of these Torque villages, because we get it from so many different angles. So again, just beautiful. I love seeing so much of this game. It's been so nice to watch this whole video. Now, this next clip is pretty insane. Simon just pulls out a rifle and shoots up a whole Outlander outpost. I don't know why. It doesn't really make sense to me. Like, Simon's Canadian. This isn't really supposed to be a type of thing he does. You're supposed to go further south for that. But I would assume that this is a mod. I'm almost certain that this is a mod because he just basically one-shots all of these enemies that he's been struggling with the whole time. But it's pretty crazy to he just whips out a rifle and at the end of this video, like, what the heck? Anyways, yeah, this was definitely one of the bits that caught me a little bit more off guard about the video. And it's pretty funny. It's nice to see that the modding tools, hopefully modding tools, are still around. And guns. Yeah, woohoo. To end it all off, we get to see Simon open a portal using an ancient gateway and a fragment from Bleakroot Bog. Now, this seems to be how you open portal dungeons, at least in the very beginning. I think the ancient gateway might be a craftable item or kind of an early story item that you would find, although we know with the exploration mode, you're not going to have any of these story items, so I'm assuming you would craft it somehow. And these fragments, I would guess you find in different biomes. Maybe you do a mini boss fight, and it opens up a portal for you. We do get to see that this is a 10-minute duration portal, whatever that means. I guess it's just you have 10 minutes to complete this dungeon, then you get booted out whether you finished it or not. So it's pretty cool, but unfortunately, as he walks into the portal, the video fades to black and it ends. Hopefully, this is a teaser for what's to come. Next, we'll get to see portal dungeons, or maybe we'll see something totally different. You never really know with the Hytale team, especially Simon now. I was not expecting him to post 3 screenshots and 16 minutes of gameplay right off the bat after acquiring Hytale. So, I'm loving it. Hopefully you're loving it. And stick around. I'll do my very best to cover all this Hytale news. I'm losing so much sleep over this right now, and that's borderline problematic. But until the next Hytale news, goodbye, stay happy, live life, go Hytale. Woohoo! Bye-bye.